Sarah Palin and Hillary Clinton came to prominence during the 2008 presidential elections. It was one of the first large breakthroughs for women in politics. Never before had the possibility of a female president been this close to reality. The media, however, was more concerned with their fashion sense and gender discrepancies than their qualifications for office. Articles that were supposed to be written about campaign speeches and interviews that would typically address political theory instead criticized Hillary Clinton's latest pantsuit and mocked Sarah Palin's recent faux pas. Their journeys to the White House fell short, and many believed it was due to their treatment by the media. The silver lining, however, is their harsh treatment provoked interest and further analysis into the underlying gender bias that has hindered the advancement of politically oriented women.
Sarah Palin and Hillary Clinton are not the first female faces in politics. There have been other noticeable women, but not a lot. The first woman to win election to the Senate was Rebecca Latimer Felton of Georgia in 1922. Only since 1978 has there been a woman in the Senate every year. The first woman in the House of Representatives was elected in 1917. Currently, there are 78 women making up 17.8% of the representatives. Recently, women have become more noticeable in today's government. Linda Haig, the U.S. Attorney of the Northern District of California, told us that she benefited from the generation just before. Women 10 years older paved the way. She concedes, however, that many women in my generation have stepped back to take care of family. We wonder how this may affect women in the new generation as they start to choose their career path. History shows that we have come far as a nation to improve gender equality, and yet the truth is there is so much more to improve on. Although there is now finally a presence of women running for high-ranking political jobs, the dominance of male competitors is still completely prominent, as Dr. Bradley highlights.
It feels a little bit like there is the woman or all the men. And it bums me out that that's the way the landscape of politics is today. It bums me out that there aren't lots more women congresspeople, lots more women governors, lots more women CEOs. And I think until the numbers, it's basically what Sandberg says in Lean In, until we get enough women kind of in the pipeline to leadership positions or in, corporate leadership positions and education leadership positions and government leadership positions, that we're going to have more women to choose from when it comes to the executive branch. So I'm cautiously optimistic, but I wish it was coming faster.
Part of what often holds women back from pursuing a career is the way they perceive themselves. Women often do not feel as if they're qualified for the job, even if their qualifications are equal to their male counterparts. Ms. Haig agrees, saying, "Women look much more critically at themselves." She told us a story about one time when she was on Barbara Boxer's committee to hire new federal judges. "We got 35 applications, only 2 from women. A lot of the men weren't even close to being qualified." Pamela Miatelis is the communications coordinator for Emerge California, a political training program for women. She offers the same view, giving us a typical example of how girls and women feel when they're asked if they are qualified.
You have to persuade women that they are qualified. We find when you take men and women with the same educational background and the same career background, you ask a man and a woman if they're qualified to run for public office. The women will say, "No, I don't think I'm qualified." And the man will say, "Oh yeah, I'm qualified." So it's a matter of perception and the way women perceive themselves.
Furthermore, if women succeed in attaining jobs of high authority, they feel as though they are not valued co-workers. Many have noted that points brought up by women at meetings are often discounted or even ignored. Adding to that sentiment, in a field where women are a minority, everything they do is more visible, including their mistakes. This forces women to have to fight for their spot and prove over and over again that they deserve to be in their position. While Melinda was earning her bachelor's in political science, she had one class where she was the only girl. And she quotes, "Some of the guys formed a study group, and they very purposely didn't invite me to join. I concluded they didn't want me because I was a girl. After it was announced that I got the highest score on our first exam by my professor who noted this act of sexism, the guys invited me to join their study group the next day. I declined the offer." Although Melinda was strong enough to overcome this bias, many women think that certain stereotypes, attitudes, and expectations, as observed in Melinda's case, make it more difficult for them to do their jobs. These stereotypes serve as subtle barriers and limit recognition of their potential and effectiveness.
The role women play in the family can also serve as a barrier. In the past, it has been women that are the caretakers of the family. They mind the children and do the housework. In the past decade, however, the role of a woman in the family has changed, yet the housewife stereotype continues. There are both internal and external pressures on women because of this. Managers see family and children as a factor that holds women back, causes a lack of focus, and inhibits her from putting 100% effort into her job. When America still sees women as caretakers, it is hard for them to believe that their place is anywhere but at home. Anne-Marie Slaughter, for example, was previously the Director of Policy Planning for the U.S. State Department and Dean of Princeton's Woodrow Wilson School of Public and International Affairs. Last year, she made the decision to put her job aside to take care of her teenage children. She felt as though it wasn't even a choice, which does not refer to social expectations, but to a maternal imperative felt so deeply that the choice was reflexive. When she left, many saw her decision as selfish. She also says that in government, leaving to spend time with family is a euphemism for being fired. If women also have the responsibilities of childrearing, it makes it much harder to hold a high-ranking government job that requires so much time away from home. To avoid losing these types of jobs altogether, the fathers must agree to help out with the family responsibilities.
And I think we need more women who sort of take that by the horns and demand or ask or bargain with their life partners to make the family stuff work. Because I think what happens too often in American society is when women have kids, they feel such guilt if they're not doing all of the lion's share of the family life care, that it really pulls at them and pulls them away from the workplace. And then women end up less satisfied, honestly, most of the time.
Although many women have learned to ignore this stereotype of the stay-at-home mom, they still choose to take that path simply because of maternal instinct. Many mothers quit their jobs, not because they believe that that is their role in society, but because they want to. Melinda says that once a woman quits her job, it can be extremely difficult to step back into the game. I see this crisis in stay-at-home mothers because they now want to come back. Her advice to new mothers who want to leave their jobs is to keep connected with your career, either part-time or stay connected with professional networks.
Women are also held back due to the lack of mental and academic support. Experience and education are two of the most important factors in career advancement. Women, however, are inhibited from gaining the experience that men receive because of the lack of training and mentoring for women in all fields of government. There are no formal mentoring programs for women in the federal government. To have good training, one needs a good mentor, but because there are so few women who have actually made it to the top, female mentors come in short supply. This makes it easier for men to become schooled and guided into the high ranks of government. For the few women who receive guidance, many of them believe their mentors and supervisors even encourage them to actually stay in staff positions, which are assumed to be more nurturing kinds of positions and more suitable for women, rather than move to line positions. This is part of the reason why women tend to be employed at the lower ranks in the federal government at much greater numbers than men. Women account for only 29.95% of the senior executive service in the federal government, a number that has only increased by less than a percentage point in each of the last 3 years. Yet, they represent 44% of the federal workforce overall, because the majority work as secretaries.
The wage gap between women and men is likely a result of the imbalance of occupations that men and women hold. The way women and men are spread throughout the workforce is shown to favor higher ranking and thus higher paying jobs for men, while women have jobs with lower pay. Women are just as committed and ambitious as men are, but the kinds of jobs they are trusted with and the rate of their promotions is vastly different.
For the women who are strong enough to overcome these initial barriers, they face a whole new obstacle once they reach the top of the political ladder. This obstacle, as displayed with Sarah Palin and Hillary Clinton, is known as the media.
We see time and time again when a female candidate and a male candidate run that the coverage of the women is sexist. They focus on appearance. There's a negative depiction of a strong woman leader. It's what we call the bitch factor. A male strong leader is admired for his strength, not so with a woman. This is similar to what Sheryl Sandberg, the CEO of Facebook and the author of Lean In, she talks about the likability correlation. Successful women, the more successful they are, the less liked they are. It's the opposite is true for men. The more successful they are, the more they're liked. So this is, a particular challenge for women.
Our society has made it almost impossible for women to have it all. Once they overcome the obstacles to actually have a top political position, they face new ones involving sabotage from the media and balancing their work and family life. A woman who can overcome all these barriers, stereotypes, bias, maternal instinct, the pay gap, the media, and the lack of moral support, training, and mentoring, is no ordinary woman. She is a superwoman. How can we even believe that gender equality within the government is possible without making changes?
We must find ways to shrink these barriers to allow women an equal chance to have political leadership roles as men do. As women gain influence in the government, the hope is that a domino effect will cause more and more women to join the government. The presence of female political icons is critical. It is important that women at the top make an effort to encourage those below them. Work like that of Pamela Michaelis is incredibly important because it encourages girls to pursue government positions and promotes confidence in their abilities. Melinda said it is crucial that young women must not only be book smart, but must also take on leadership roles. Hopefully, these trailblazers will set the way for other women to follow.
Managers need to try and provide a gender-neutral environment. It is important that they weaken stereotypes by giving women assignments that will highlight their abilities, by appointing several women to an all-male task force to help women feel less isolated, or even simply by using expressions that don't support stereotypes that may serve to constrain women.
As Sandberg said, we need women at all levels, including the top, to change the dynamic, reshape the conversation, to make sure women's voices are heard and heeded, not overlooked and ignored. It is believed that we will never close the achievement gap until we close the ambition gap. For this reason, women must believe in themselves and own their success. Melinda believes that women have to put themselves out there. They have to believe and make a sacrifice. It is not always easy, but it is important for women to do this. At this point, while stereotypes and all other obstacles are still present, the best thing women can do is ignore the sexism. They should follow Melinda's example by having faith in their own intelligence and in the fact that sexism will disappear once others recognize the woman's true potential. Melinda does not take the sexism to heart, but rather laughs at it. I've always been a little bit delighted when I see the light bulb go off in other people that they figured out my true capabilities.
Women need to be further integrated into our government because it brings a better, more equal perspective. Currently, the government represents almost exclusively the interests of men. With more women making decisions for our country, our attention will be turned further towards issues that are relevant to more Americans. Studies have shown that there will be less war, because women are more hesitant about sending children to the battlefield. With women in government, the voice of women fighting for equality throughout our entire culture will be greatly amplified.
Diverse opinion, women's point of view are going to make sounder policy. On average, women's voting records favor education, the environment, and healthcare. Multiple studies from multiple sectors, including those from private corporations, show that women over time and in the aggregate make different decisions. They bring different ideas to the table. In groups, women are shown to be consensus-oriented. Women approach risk differently. They have an altered view of time and conflict.
They bring a different set of life experiences, a broader perspective, and a modulating voice. Women in government positions have had noticeable effects on policy making, political discourse, and the function of legislative institution because they are concerned about the public good and are more socially compassionate than men.
Bringing gender equality to the government is key to changing the entire gender ecosystem of our country. Women in government are effective and trustworthy in the government, as seen in solving of the recent government shutdown.
The government shutdown this past fall, the solution and the brokering was done by the women in the Senate. It was women, Republican and Democratic senators that came together and brokered the deal. And even the men senators, as a means of compliment, said, yes, women in politics work to get things done, men work to get the credit.
Women excel in empathy and forcing consensus, which makes them, in general, much more peaceful leaders than men. Women can change the world and make it a more peaceful, secure place. So why shouldn't we give them that chance?